this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black T News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the tragedy in Maine. There was a mass shooting that took the lives of 18, and I believe there are 13 injured, and the person who did it they're still looking for him last I saw. So it's a pretty tragic situation, pretty um, unsafe situation, and and as these things usually go, there's things in the background that of the suspect anyway that are alarming. And the question is, what can we do about situations like these? Also want to talk about Republicans finally got a new speaker, and so now most people have never really seen this guy, so now everyone's digging to see information about him. I also want to talk about the school lunch program that Republicans tried to pass a resolution against Biden administration for weaponizing the school lunch program, and the Democrats pushed up against it, which I've mentioned this before. I haven't seen a ton of people talk about it. I had a pretty viral TikTok talking about it, and people are like, oh, but Republicans are the ones who want to steal the lunches. And so I want to clarify and talk about that situation as well. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream, it costs to run my website, all that stuff. So if you guys can support in that way, I do very much appreciate it. You guys can do stars if you're watching on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats or super thanks, but there's a link in the description. So if you want to support, you can go to the website, check out different merchandise that we have available online, like black tea mugs, and we got other merch as well. We got this you are not that special, so if you want to trigger someone in your life or just let them know where they stand, we got those, and special mugs and other stuff. So check out that stuff, and you guys can check out some of my books I have available on Amazon. You can just search my name, Christina Elbar, and follow me on Amazon, which I know many of you have, so thank you. But if you go to blacktnews.com and go to that merchandise page, there's a banner at the top that'll take you to my book website. I have 17 books that are out. 2 are fiction or nonfiction, the rest are fiction. So I write young chapter books going on to young/new adult stuff. I just write whatever the heck I feel like it and just let my imagination go. So go ahead and check me out. So anyway, I do, though the first top story will be pretty heavy, I do have something humorous that I want to start with, because you guys know that I prefer to at least start with something to get a chuckle. And it is a very special day with a tweet that will live in infamy. If you guys recall this, Hillary Clinton saying happy birthday to this future president. And of course, she was not the president. She did not win. So this was pretty ballsy when she had posted this back in 2016, if you recall. Because already pretty much announcing that she believed that she was going to win. And why would you run if you didn't think that you were going to win, right? And most big races like that, especially at that point, she believed she had it in the bag, that she was going to be victorious, etc. And but the thing about those kind of proclamations is that it can always just blow up in your face. So in 2016, I was a bit limited on some things that I could say online, because I worked for the Michigan Republican Party. So I was even though I didn't have a high up position, I was a creative director. So social media and making content stuff was my job. But there was some stuff, it was, if it was too outrageous or something, then they'd be like, hey, can you take that down, you can't post that, etc., blah blah blah, because the media would watch some of our pages and call our bosses, and it might be a news story or something. So it definitely, other people got stuff mentioned in the news, and it made all of our lives more inconvenient. And I really hated that about that job. I can't imagine what it's like for so many people that know that they would be fired if they posted just like a common sense thing like men can't get pregnant, when I didn't even like the censorship that I had when I worked for Republicans. So it's probably an awful ordeal. So I'm grateful that I just can come on here and talk to you guys about my opinions every day, but my heart goes out to people who are restricted in that sort of way. So, but anyway, I left a lot of bragging, like predictions, like, oh, we're gonna like trash talk. I didn't really do that. I didn't really do that leading up to the election and other stuff like, oh, Trump's gonna win. We're gonna, yo, you guys are gonna be crying. I did not do anything like that. I didn't want to have egg on my face. So Hillary Clinton, absolutely thought she was gonna win, and so this beautiful tweet was born. And happy birthday, by the way. uh, and credit to her, she never took it down. I definitely would have took it down. Well, I don't know, people saw it. It'll live on forever. I guess at that point you might as well not take something like that down. But what a terrible humiliation to have to live through. And if she wasn't, I know what it's like to not win an election, so I can only imagine losing one that big. And you do feel a little bad for her, but then you're like, she did like push the Russia hoax that still like lives and breathes within people's minds today. So she's not a good person. Hasn't been for a minute. So but to be this confident, though, she didn't run a good campaign. Like, people talk about how, of course, she didn't visit Wisconsin and other places like that. Like, we would have post graphs and other things like, it's been such and such days since Hillary Clinton came here, and etc. So that was part of our social media stuff. But I don't know. I don't know if she had showed up in more places, people will feel like, oh yeah, I really should vote for her now. I think a lot was just her. People didn't like her. People saw her just a part of a corrupt system, a bit of a warmonger, and other things like that. People didn't genuinely like her. So I don't know if her showing up more places would have did so much. But like, there were instances, because my sister was friends with somebody who was a Democrat who was working, for Hillary's campaign and stuff, and they just wouldn't do things like put in data. Like, people would do walk books and stuff, and when you go knocking door to door, you ask someone like, hey, are you gonna, who you voting for, etc., blah blah blah. You don't spend a lot of time like trying to convince people. Like, maybe people do that when they're advocating for a particular position that's going to be on a ballot, like abortion or something like that. But a lot of times when like a state party or somebody sends someone out, they're just collecting data to be like, okay, this person's going to vote this day, so we got to make sure that we're keeping track. We're trying to make sure those people turn in their ballots. Election day, gonna call like, hey, did you turn your ballot yet? They're pushing for, they're just gathering data for like election day operation stuff to kind of know where they are. Hillary Clinton's team, there were times when they didn't even do that. Like, people will go out and basically do the mission, but they just wouldn't like put in data. So they really didn't know how far behind they were. And campaigns do that more often than you think. I don't know how many big campaigns do that often, but I can tell you, I'm aware of like smaller scale campaigns and stuff where people just think they have it in a bag and don't have to do anything. And they almost get shellacked or almost lose, or do end up losing. So um yeah, just an incredible thing that happened. Incredible thing that happened. So I shall never forget. So thank you to those who were retweeting this on her birthday. But other than that, happy birthday, Hillary Clinton. Happy birthday. So in more serious news, last night there was a mass shooting in Maine, And as I am aware of, the manhunt is still underway right now. Um, this is from a CNN article that I'm reading right now. It's just a what we know so far. An intense manhunt is still underway for suspect in Wednesday's shooting rampage at a bowling alley and a restaurant that left at least 18 dead and 13 injured in Lewiston, Maine, according to authorities. Um, the suspect is 40 years old. He's facing an arrest warrant. Um, I guess. Well, I know so many people have the policies for not saying the names, but I don't know if people need to know if they're still looking for him. Maybe it's good to. I don't know. His name is Robert Card. I just made a decision. Robert Card. He's 40. They're still looking for him. He's a suspect. And there's an arrest warrant out for him for 8 counts of murder and should be considered armed and dangerous, police said. He is a certified arms instructor and a member of the U.S. Army Reserves, according to law enforcement. Police are urging residents to shelter in place and report any suspicious activity to authorities. Lewiston is the state's second largest city and located about 36 miles north of Portland. Rampage in Maine is the deadliest U.S. mass shooting since Uvalde school shooting massacre. It adds a grim docket of 565 such incidents where 4 more people are shot, excluding the shooter across the country this year, according to Gun Violence Archive, which um that could mean people don't actually when people do gun stats, there's all kinds of things that they consider. So in any way, what this didn't mention in this snippet here is his mental health. And apparently he had been hearing voices and talked about shooting up a base, military base, and he was held in the summer for 2 weeks. And I heard that he was involuntarily held. I don't know. I'm not 100% if he was voluntarily or involuntarily held, but that'd be crazy if he was involuntarily. So it's insane to me that there are such dangerous folks around with such mental illness, and then we hear about these big stories where these mass tragedies happen and then they explode into, oh, we got to do something about getting rid of the guns, etc., etc. And I'm like, you can get rid of all the guns if you guys don't enforce some laws and other things in the books, like Uvalde situation. That person was crazy. um had assaulted women and carried around a bag of cats, dead cats, just all kinds of crazy stuff. If we don't do more when there's these mental health, because people always say, oh, mental health, as if we're trying to distract from the gun situation. No, it's I'm really concerned about the mental health when there's somebody crazy, because there's lots of people who can find a way to get a gun, have inherited a gun, or whatever, build a gun, make a gun. And getting rid of firearms from law abiding citizens who want to protect themselves, protect their families, um isn't good. If these other crazy people are still going to be able to find a way to go and commit violence, and if it's not access to a gun. My sister was talking about the other day how it's easier to build a bomb than get a than build a gun. So and that when she was in high school and stuff, when we were younger, that there was a concern about really that going on. So what is happening here? um Now Maine doesn't have red flag laws, but they have like yellow flag laws that are a bit softer. So there's like a higher standard of confiscating the weapons and stuff, but you have to get some kind of like medical expert or something to go along with getting the guns taken away. And I don't know if anyone tried that in this situation with this man here. Um, I don't know, but it seems like there maybe could have been a pathway if someone is talking about shooting up a military base, hearing voices in their head. I there's got to be some kind of metric or moves or something. I'm not saying if someone is, you got to indefinitely keep people forever. Um, but that was just, it's October. The summer wasn't that long ago, and now they've gone and done this awful tragedy. I don't want people like that to have access to all this weaponry and stuff. But if it's not a gun, it can be something else. It can be a car. Like, so what are we actually doing to protect citizens at large from people who may be a danger to somebody else? Now, in reality, I don't know if there's going to be any real solutions to these problems because so many people have agendas and don't want to, they want to achieve something, but that doesn't necessarily mean they want to solve something, you know? Um, and you have Kamala Harris tweeting out stuff like, "Oh, more kids die from, number one killer of kids," and like that's not true. It's abortion far and large, but those kids they don't care about so much. But there are laws on the books a lot of times where people break the laws, or people who shouldn't have guns, people who are mentally ill who definitely shouldn't have guns, and situations where people could have said something, did something, and it just doesn't end up. I'm not saying things like these aren't stopped in advance, but a lot of times we hear stuff like the Parkland stuff where maybe there were instances where things could have been done in advance to perhaps stop all this tragedy from happening. So, but I don't know what we're going to honestly do about mental health in this country because it doesn't seem like, just, and this is kind of talking in general now, people, I don't know, think it's cute to have mental health issues or whatever. Like wear it on their sleeve like it's some kind of like it's a horoscope or something, and or people don't take it seriously enough. Um, people misdiagnose themselves with other stuff, like it extends out to like the gender dysphoria stuff. And I read an article with you guys from the Free Press, Barry Weiss's stuff, and they were talking about, there was a whistleblower talking about like the trans stuff, and they were concerned because there were dangerous people who were clearly not well, who they were still going to get through the surgery and other things like that and approve them. And um I don't, is it all just, I don't know, prescribe this drug, do this surgery, do this thing, get that cash or big pharma, and let loose back in the world. I don't know. I don't know. But when people say in this case we got to talk about mental health, we do got to talk about mental health. This is some kind of failure. And assuming, because this is the suspect that they're all looking for, and I assume they have good reason to believe that it's him. I mean, I guess there's always a possibility that it's not. Um, but I hope they obviously catch this guy. And my heart goes out to the victims, the families, and don't say thoughts and prayers because um I know not everyone is a believer, but people do usually appreciate when you say kind words, when you are thinking of them, and when people are believers and you're praying with them for their strength, for their comfort, people do very much appreciate that. I know when my dad was in the hospital and people were praying all over the world, like I believe that literally helped to save his life, just knowing that all these people that he had reached out and touched, because he's a minister, um helped to pray him along, and so that gave him more strength to fight through what he was going through. So you skeptics out there with your mockery, just stop. Though I haven't I can't say I've seen that sort of rhetoric today on Twitter, but that's usually like the sentiment. So um we'll keep with updates with this story as they come along. There's still, from my understanding, last I looked, stuff I'm reading is like not even an hour ago. So be safe out there. But I will say, I think you're gonna have a really hard time if the goal is still to like mass confiscation or something, which, a lot of people won't admit that out loud. And um most gun crimes are committed, even like mass shootings are committed with handguns, not an AR-15 or something like that. When these, big stories like this happen, yeah, you usually hear about an AR-15, but people do use, most time they're committed with handguns. So even if you got rid of like AR-15s, people would use other guns. And if the logic is like, well, we have to maximize and saving the most people, a lot of they're scary looking to people, the AR-15. So even if you get rid of that and you look at numbers of people who are still dying from like gun crime, you'd have to be like, oh, we got to get rid of the handguns, so that logic would just continue to follow. And I after seeing like what happened in Israel on the 7th, which I mean, I guess I had feelings and thoughts about this before. You want to make sure that you always protect yourself and protect your family. Like you would want a situation like something like that, people going in and just and not being able to have some kind of protection with you. And knowing that I don't know, you never know when something might happen with gangs or um some, I don't know, especially people coming in from the border and drugs, and there's actual literal terrorists who have been caught at the border. So think about how many people haven't been caught at the border. And people aren't just going to be like, oh yeah, I totally give away my right to self-preservation and me being able to take care of my family. That's not going to happen, not in the US and not for a very long time. So um we got to find some kind of other solution, some kind of compromise, because um folks thinking that they're just about to get rid of all the guns or something like what Gavin Newsom or whoever wants to do, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, moving on, the GOP has nominated a new speaker. Well, not just nominated, they actually got it successfully done. So Mike Johnson, very generic name. He actually made a joke about it. But most people aren't, I mean, I guess I've seen him. I'm not like, he definitely hasn't been in the limelight as much as some other people in Congress. So people have been digging up as much as possible on Mike. People are noting that he's an evangelical. People are complaining that I guess that he has pretty standard evangelical positions. you know, um pro traditional marriage, other stuff like that. People are upset that he's very pro gun, very much against abortion and other things like that. I don't know if he's going to be able to do like the other things like raising a ton of money for candidates and recruiting candidates and other stuff like that, and all the procedural stuff, but we'll see. Some people are very happy that he's very conservative, but I've also seen people very upset because I've seen Matt Walsh share videos during like George Floyd time, like 2020, and basically saying that, white people are treated better than black people and we need to solve systemic kind of issues and so on. So that kind of left wing position stuff, Matt sniffs that out and is like weakness. So we'll see in time how he does. Do I think all this I hope he's worth it. I hope he's worth all the drama that we went through with, ousting McCarthy. Um, they have a very slim majority and still have to work with Democrats, especially in the Senate, because we don't have a majority there. So I don't know how much is really going to be different, but Gates obviously had it out for McCarthy. I don't know what Nancy Mace and other people issues were, besides Nancy Mace is really thirsty and wants attention. I know, but I hope it's all worth it. I don't know if it'll be worth it, but here's just a little snippet of his speech when he got elected.
To take good care of it. I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it.
So, like a good biblical sort of speech, but we'll see how he does. People have also noted that he was against delaying the certification of. I mean, he was for like delaying the certification, um, for the 2020 election, and I guess the points that he raised were about some states were like changing their policies, which that did happen as far as like voting and curing ballots and other things like that. And again, that kind of stuff did happen, but um so people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's an election denier who's now the Speaker of the House. And so somebody on Twitter I saw who said that, I wrote under their comment, I was like, so are you upset about Hakeem Jeffries being the minority speaker? Which I didn't get an answer to that, but Hakeem Jeffries is a wild dude. And if Republicans didn't have the majority, he would be the Speaker of the House, and he's had his issues with other elections where Democrats don't win. So I'm really annoyed with people who just try to act like, I don't know, the 2020 election is the only election that had ever happened, and that people didn't behave badly in 2016. Many of you know, if you've been following me long enough, know that I went to the 2017 inauguration of Donald Trump, and I went to the inaugural ball and stuff, and people were acting a fool that day. There were people who were protesting, breaking windows, other kinds of things. A limousine was set on fire. I missed a lot of the drama on the street because when Trump was revving up like toward the end, like maybe his last like 10-15 minutes or something, I'm like, okay, I've been enough rallies, I pretty much know what he's gonna say. My feet were like so cold and they were numb because you had to get there early and stuff. And so even when I was walking, they just kind of were like by the time we were leaving. So I was like, okay, Gina, we can go. Like, let's leave a little early because I want to make sure we got on the train back to, like, because we stayed in Maryland. And so I just didn't want to be caught up in the big flow of everyone leaving and stuff. So we left a little early. So we did miss the craziness, but it was on the news. So if you didn't know, I guess you don't watch the news. And people were like calling us, texting, like, are you guys okay? We're like, oh, we're okay. And then there were people outside of the ball who were, there was, protesters and stuff out there. And which we missed a lot of that too, because I was like, the line might be really long. Let's leave early. So I made sure me and my sisters, we left early. And so by the time later when I met Lauren Southern, who was with Rebel TV. She hasn't been with Rebel in a long time, but that's most, I guess, where I knew her at first. And so I was like, oh my gosh, and her voice was hoarse, totally hoarse. She's like, you look gorgeous. I'm like, what happened to your voice? And I guess she got, was like arguing with a lot of protesters and stuff outside. So there was a lot out there at the time, but there were still some people. There were people when we were in line for the ball. Like, people were attacking people in line, usually like older women. Because me and my sisters were like, if they throw something at us, we're gonna have to fight them if they try something. So we're like, we were preparing ourselves mentally to have to defend ourselves from these crazy like protesters and stuff. And so there are people outside also when we left as well. So I don't want to hear the nonsense from people who, like, even in 2016 CNN like did this huge like um article about election deniers and stuff. Like, here's a list of election deniers that are running in all these states and stuff. And their election denial was pretty much only for only the 2020 election. This is for this last election, the midterms and stuff. So they didn't include anyone who, had questions or ran conspiracies about the 2016 election. Only, not for the Bush election or anything like that. Only for the 2020 election. Only that can qualify you as an election denier. You can deny every other election, but 2020 is the only one you are not allowed to question without being tarred and feathered for life. So they put so many people on the list, even people who just asked like genuine questions at first, not people who still maintain like, oh yeah, it was fraud, Donald Trump totally won. Like, they had Ron DeSantis and other people like that on there. And if you ask Ron DeSantis what happened in 2016, he's like, yeah, Trump lost. Like, but a lot of people were asking questions at first. People totally rational were asking questions at first. I know Democrats who were asking questions at first, like, I don't believe he got all those numbers, you know? So, but they still made the list because they want him to make the list. So it's pretty ridiculous. So anyway, you can't come at Mike Johnson and be like, oh, he's an election denier, and just totally overlook the fact that Hakeem Jeffries, you know, thought Trump was an illegitimate president. So just stop. Just stop. It's a game. I understand it's a game, but we recognize it's a game. So just stop. Just stop. Anyway, moving on. I want to talk about something going on legislatively. So some time ago, I have mentioned before that the Biden administration made a policy regarding school lunch. Well, it was being applied to school lunches, like if you didn't adhere to the standards of what he believes with the LGBT community, allowing boys in the girls locker room and bathroom and other stuff like that, that they see that as discrimination, not adhering to their gender identity, blah blah blah. So they're going to withhold federal funds, and they directed that toward like school lunch programs and stuff. So I've mentioned that before. I did a pretty viral video on TikTok. There was this comedian guy who brought up like, Republicans are terrible people, blah blah blah, and I was, because they don't believe in women's rights, and so I'm like, so I replied and I said, why is it when they talk about women's rights, they're only talking about a woman having an abortion, or they're talking about men, but they never say anything about men going into women's locker rooms or women's bathrooms or their spas, and or Biden wanting to take away the lunch programs and other stuff like that. So I don't know where it must have got on like, I don't know, the other side of TikTok, but at one point in time I had like a bunch of libs who just came in like, oh my gosh, you're so dumb, blah blah blah, women have a right to choose, and they're like, it's the Republicans who want to steal the lunches. It's the Republicans who want to steal the lunches. So just to get that out the way, during the pandemic, they decided that everyone could get a free lunch. Like, everyone would qualify for free lunch, right? There's a lot of kids in America. That's obviously a big bill, right? So after that period like went out, there were Republicans who didn't want to extend it. Not because they don't want kids to eat, But not everyone needs that big bill, that requirement for the big bill from the federal government to cover all the lunches. And that's just the truth. So people like Rand Paul was like, "Hey, let's implement reduced lunch again." So there's a certain percentage, um like if you live um somewhere, uh 136, under the current federal law, only students with families who have incomes at 130% of the poverty line or below are eligible for entirely free lunch meals. That would be a family of four that makes roughly 36,000 or less. Families with income between 130,000 and 185,000% above the poverty line pay a reduced price for meals. Um, and then if it's above that, then you'd pay like the full price or whatever. So you could argue that I don't know, maybe the reduced needs to be, you know, have a lower threshold or something to get into. But growing up, like I've been on reduced lunch, I've been on the free lunch, and I've never had to really pay for lunch myself. But when my two younger sisters, by the time they graduated, you know, they were paying for their lunch. We had moved out to like the suburbs, and we lived in a, you know, pretty decent house. And but most of the most of us were grown up and working and contributing to all the bills and stuff. And you know, my parents weren't like wealthy or anything, you know, like that. But they were just like, we can at this point. They could have still like tried to qualify, but they're like, we're living in Clarkston. Let's just go ahead and we can manage to do that. So, you know, they just paid or whatever. But I grew up with kids who could definitely afford to pay the full price for lunch. I mean, you go to public school, it's not just kids who are living in trailer parks and so on who goes there. There's also people who with families with big, you know, good businesses and other stuff like that who are extremely well off. So, or some people don't even like buy the lunches. A lot of people make their own. So, just assuming that everyone needs to qualify for the free lunch isn't necessary. So when people say, "Oh, Republicans they are the ones who want to take away the lunch," no, they just kind of wanted it to revert back to what it was before. So all those people out there who want to push back on, "Oh, it's the Republican," that's not what's happening. But the Biden administration was actually weaponizing the lunches for their political benefit for the LGBT community. So a Kansas Republican called for a resolution to be passed against the Biden administration for weaponizing it, the lunch program. And of course, the Democrats did not want to go along with that. So article is from out of the Daily Wire. So I'm going to go ahead and read this really quick. And Senator Roger Marshall um, spoke with the Senate floor on Thursday, calling on his colleagues to support his resolution to prevent the Biden administration from withholding school lunch money, funding from schools that don't allow children to use the bathroom of the opposite sex. Democrats, however, remain mostly united to ensure the defeat of Marshall's resolution. Marshall's resolution needed a simple majority to pass in the Democrat controlled Senate, but came up short with only 47 senators voting in the affirmative and 50 senators, all from the Democrat caucus, voting against it. Senator Joe Manchin broke away from his party to vote with Republicans because he's not totally crazy, but hey, you know, I don't know if he's going to retire or what's going to be up with Manchin, but anyway, Marshall has been sounding alarm bells for months after the U.S. Department of Agriculture updated its anti discrimination policies to include sexual orientation and gender identity in accordance with a 2021 executive order by President Joe Biden. The move means that schools receiving funds from USDA's Food and Nutrition Service must abide by policies that prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. In July, Marshall introduced the Congressional Resolution Act of disapproval that would prevent the federal government from withholding lunch money from schools that don't go along with Biden's radical gender and theory policies. Marshall CRA was criticized by those on the left, including Senator John Fetterman, who claimed it makes it possible for some random lunch lady to deny lunch to a hungry child because she says her God tells her to. Sounds like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's a little confused. Marshall responded to the criticism from Democratic Senator, telling Daily Wire that that is threatening to take lunches away from school children. Don't be fooled here. The Biden administration is the only player in this policy fight that is taking away lunches from children, Marshall said in a statement. There is real world evidence that USDA's policy has already taken away school lunch funding from low income children, weaponizing school lunch money in this pursuit of radical agenda and putting students in the crosshairs of unconscionable is unconscionable, and we will not stand for it. Senator Ted Cruz also spoke on the floor of the Senate Thursday, joining Marshall in sounding the alarm on the Biden administration's updated anti-discrimination policy. This outrageous policy by the Biden administration would deny American children food unless parents and schools ram radical gender ideology down children's throats, Cruz said in a statement shared with the Daily Wire. No girl at school should feel threatened because it's Joe Biden's policy that a boy can use a girl's restroom at school. No girl playing girl sports should have to compete against someone who has a physical biological advantage. This Biden administration rule is the opposite of what Title IX is about, and I hope Congress puts an end to it. So that's what's going on. So Biden admin, this is something they implemented before that I've talked about, that people have talked about, still in effect. There were some schools that they already tried to push it with that ended up getting some, I don't know, waivers and whatnot, but they're not gonna do that everywhere. And looks like it's starting to maybe perhaps go into more effect now. So this isn't right. This isn't right. And I can tell you, if I was in a situation, I'm obviously been out of school for a long time, but when I was a kid, I didn't even like changing in front of girls in the locker room or something. I would, go in the stall. I didn't really like get over much of that until I was, a bit older, and I guess working at the gym and not actually going inside of a, bathroom stall to change or something. So I just can't imagine how much more uncomfortable I would have been if there was a boy in the locker room with me. And so I've said many times I don't wish gender dysphoria on anyone. However, if someone decides to live out their life, like internally, however you feel, that's how you feel. And I don't, with besides getting, I don't know, help from a professional or some kind of revelation and healing from God, I don't know what exactly you can do about that. But how you decide to live out however you feel, which I don't know how you can't validate that anyway. If you're a boy and you say that you feel like a girl, you have no way to really validate that statement. It's just your assumption. So if you want to live your life to the best of your ability as a girl, and you want to go in the girls' locker room, you want to take hormones, you want to grow out your hair, etc., those are choices that you make. And you can make those choices, but whatever internal suffering that you have with your identity, if you decide to take that on, put that on the outside, and now it's something that you have to contend with the rest of the world about. And so you're asking everyone to just agree with it and to go along with it and treat you how you feel or whatever. But that's not everyone's obligation. You certainly don't have that right to make that demand of people, and they can do it out of what they deem as kindness. I don't think it's kind to live my life untruthfully. I don't think that's a benefit to that person. I don't think that's a benefit to me. Um, so I don't think everyone coddling around the fragility of their delusion is good for them. And if my words are triggering, it is just, I'm trying to kind of to be nice about it as possible. But I was it last week I showed you guys like a tweet from like the Trevor Project. It was saying like pronouns save lives, pronouns prevent people from unaliving themselves, and all kinds of stuff. But if we have to adhere to that in order for someone to not self-harm, that person is still ill. They are still ill, but you're just making everyone else live in bondage, live a lie, live a out of fantasy that we know isn't true. And then eh, beyond people knowing that it's not true, but just bowing down and living in fear or guilt, you know, you have people who go the extra step and then want to warp reality and the truth altogether. So back to the top of the hour, talking about mental issues in America. I don't know how much we really want people to be well. I think we would much rather have people feel like they're being treated nicely and kindly or whatever. Well, not kindly, because I think being nice and being kind aren't exactly the same thing. And I think sometimes to be kind, we can't always treat you nicely, I guess, and put things in the most delicate kind of way, because the truth can be painful. The truth can be a two-edged sword. It can cut me like it cuts you. You know, I guess it's more like a Bible thing, but um, but sometimes you just have to speak it. So this is crazy that if someone is a boy and they want to go in the girls' bathroom or locker room or whatever, that you would be willing to take away free lunch from all the low income kids at a school. That's bonkers. But you know that parent that if a school needs that they're likely not going to fight for those girls. They're likely not going to do that because they need to keep that the money. So they're playing a pretty terrible, rude game. And we got to speak up about it, cuz this I don't think this has been common knowledge. It's something I've repeated and that I've talked about a lot. And so I hope that you guys talk about it as well and it gets more traction, and that it's not just something that we talk about online, that it's something that you talk about to your neighbors and your friends and your fellow, PTA, members and other parents. Like, hey, did you know that the Biden administration is doing this? So people can really think about it and be like, oh my gosh, it's actually really awful. Really awful. And there have been times when things were more plenty, and there have been times, I'm talking about like personally, where it was rough. And I it just this is crazy to me. It's just crazy to me to be willing to put everyone at such an inconvenience um for this ideology, for such a small percentage of the population. Gavin Newsom was asked a question about trans rights the other day, not the other day, but it was a couple weeks ago. And he's like, oh, it's a small percentage of the population and it doesn't, it's all the stuff is overblown. I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, I'm pretty sure he said this because he wants to run for president and he's totally gearing up for it. And I don't know if he's just waiting for his moment to see if his moment can still happen, or if he's just going to barge in and say, "No, I want to do this and screw Joe Biden." I don't I don't know exactly what the plan is. I know that it seems really, really obvious that he wants to do it. But I also thought that was an obvious lie, because at that point in time, I was aware of a story of a man who should have been put on death row and executed and all that other stuff. I don't know if his execution would have happened by now, but he was on death row, and he had killed some his infant children. And but Gavin Newsom, he's not for death penalty and whatnot. He's just, unless you're like an unborn baby, like you don't, everyone else, you can't get the death penalty. Only the babies can. So, this person was decided they're a woman, and so now they're in a woman's prison. This person who's a man who should be executed for murdering people, um, is living their life as a trans woman in a woman's prison. So I'm like, don't tell me that this stuff belittle it like, oh, it's just a couple people, it's not a big deal, it's overblown. When you're willing to just supersede all these these women, you don't care about their safety, you don't care about how comfortable they are, you just want to protect your ideology for whatever reason. And I can understand maybe in California that I don't know, that maybe that helps you out electorally, but I don't understand Joe Biden. I don't understand Joe Biden other than the fact that I mean, I've gone through the reasons what perhaps before, and because politically there's just not that big of a number for it to be some kind of huge electoral gain or something. But and I do understand like the I don't know, the oppression Olympics, the victim coalition sort of stuff going on. But you could say maybe it's just all these people who are like running his administration as he's just kind of the placeholder and sometimes mouthpiece. That maybe perhaps that's a part of it. Um, but I do think a lot of it is that it's a good way to destroy a lot of the institutions around us, a lot of the, I don't know, conservative sort of conservatism, Western ideals, and other sorts of things. They can use the LGBT community and a lot of other things to sort of tear down these institutions that they don't like. Um, I think there's a bigger sort of nefarious thing involved in it, but I can't, I don't know. I'm not saying everyone's kind of in on the plot there. I think there's a lot of useful idiots, as the ex KGB people would say. Yuri, gosh, look, I can't always play his video, but Yuri, I can't think of his last name, but the ex KGB agent. He talked about useful idiots and the demoralization of society. You see that so much with like the um LGBT mafia, and also like even some of the stuff with these coalitions like BLM signing on to like the Free Palestine movement and stuff. I'm just like, more stuff that is just the alignment of groups who want to destroy Western civilization. Um, I saw a video today from someone who's running for um, a position in government, maybe with city council or something. Let me see if I can find it real quick and show it with you guys. We got a little bit of time. Um, I was going to rant about this another day, but hey, we're here. We're still here, aren't we? So, um, but they're telling white people that they shouldn't, they don't have a right to tell other people how to resist. And I guess that's not news to you guys because people have been saying that, and I've definitely talked about people saying that, and how people have been offended with me for, I don't know, my positions because I'm a black woman, and how can um I don't know, not side with Hamas and, I don't know, the brutal terror that they inflicted on October the 7th. Um just really nutty. I told you guys yesterday, I told my mom about that. She was so offended um that people were like, how could you expect black people, just has nothing to do with anything, nothing to do with the terror. Maybe I retweeted it and it's on my front page. I'm not finding it. I'm not finding it. So, well, maybe we'll have to talk about it tomorrow. But he's running. I wish I could remember what he's running for. But legitimately running for some kind of position in the government, and was talking about how, hey, you should not tell people how to white people need to stop telling Palestinians, Arabs, and Black people how they should resist. So, if you have an issue with the violence and looting, or in this case, murder and rape and all that stuff, if you have an issue with it, just shut up if you're white, because you can't tell people how they resist. It's because you don't know what it's like to be in that oppressive group, etc. So, that's the kind of stuff that they believe. That's the kind of stuff that they push, and it's really crazy. It's legitimately crazy, but yeah, I'm not saying it, guys. I'm not seeing it. I got to find it. I apologize. I guess it wasn't on the original roster anyway, but as I was talking, I just thought about it. I do see a lot of clips of this crisis actor. I think I showed you guys this crisis actor the other day. Um who was, praising Allah as like missiles were overhead, um going to like the rockets were going into Israel. And then there was like another video he posted crying after the bombing at the hospital, which actually wasn't an Israel airstrike. It was due to the rockets on their side like not going how it was planned and should have been. So there's a new video of this crisis actor going along that he uploaded. So let me show you guys this video here of this guy, and he's, apparently one of the victims in the hospital now, on his deathbed. Very tragic. This poor young man. So this is the kind of, videos they put out on the internet, on the tickety talk. الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم أن يشفيك أسأل الله العظيم رب العرش العظيم. So does that look I don't know. I don't, I've been to the hospital before. I've just never like profusely patted someone like that, I guess. But then he, posted. He's all better. بطل في ظهور بطل في معالم اصلا المنطقه بطل اقسم miraculous recovery, miraculous. Yeah, he's just fine. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. So that's what they do. They have. I'm not saying that people haven't died in Gaza. Of course they have. Of course they have. Not just because of the airstrikes and them being close within like civilian areas, because Hamas sets up their bases and stuff around civilians, but also because their rockets don't always make it over there, and they do hit their own people. As far as the sort of numbers that they're reporting, you can't trust Hamas with the numbers. The sort of casualties that they're saying so fast don't make sense. And Biden was asked about this the other day, and he said, that he has no confidence in those numbers. I'm not trying to belittle people who have died, but I just want to tell people, like, you can't be confident about the numbers that they put out. That doesn't mean that people who are dying, like, their lives didn't matter, other stuff like that. But they do have crisis actors. Like when the hospital, when they were saying they hit the hospital, and they were saying that 500 dead, like they like were parading bodies and stuff around, and it wasn't even Israel that did it. So they are very well versed in the court of the public opinion, or trying to get, the international community to come on and just hate Israel, which they do anyway, the international community. So they're hoping to make everyone else kind of stop, make Israel back down from destroying Hamas, etc. So I just want to put it out there what they do. And Hamas actually had uploaded this one video where they're carrying I guess it's supposed to be a woman or child or something, and someone's crying, but they had to take it down because it's clearly a doll in the video, and people could tell it was a doll, so they took it down. But the internet's forever, especially when you want to upload your propaganda. So I'll have to do a compilation or something. So just keep that in mind out there. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website because it does cost to stream, it costs to run my website and everything. So if you can help in that sort of way, I very much do appreciate it and appreciate you. Check out some different books and stuff that I have. You guys can follow me on Amazon. Just search for my name. But if you want to find my stuff, my books, if you go to Black Tea News and go to the merchandise page, there's a banner that takes you to my book website. But I have 17 books that are published altogether. Two are nonfiction. One of them is my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. That's available on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes and Noble. You guys can get paperback. You guys can get it in Kindle or Nook, I guess. So it covers theology, obviously, but also talks about rights, talks about science, talks about philosophy, it talks about politics, etc. So it's a very well-rounded book on the topic. So I suggest that you pick it out. Also, it talks about morality. I believe that morality is objective, but even if it is subjective, I also make the case that's, I think, more of a reason to have very strict standards when we should value the right to life, because I don't trust you. I don't trust you. You don't have to trust me, but I don't trust you to decide when I am a valuable human being worthy of protection and dignity. I don't I don't think that should be your arbitrary decision. So the most consistent standard is at conception when we begin. I guess the other consistent standard would be when you're outside of the womb, but most people find abortions at like 39 weeks to be pretty grotesque. So, but that really also talks about like the consistent standards and why you see so many people on the left who are pushing like no limitations at all. So, not that I'm saying that happens a lot or anything like that, but there are women who have late term abortions. They abort healthy, viable babies. They do. It happens. It happens. Healthy women do abort healthy, viable fetuses. So got a lot of information in the book, so I encourage you guys to check it out. But there's also like fiction books that are for kids and older readers and other stuff like that. So go ahead and check out my stuff. If you're in the Metro Detroit area, on I think it's November the 10th to the 12th, if I'm not mistaken, is Motor City Comic Con. I will be there. And my sister, who actually did the artwork for this book, will also be there as well. She'll have a table right next to me. So if you guys are in that area, I hope to see you there. Also, another thing, my sister is having an art showcase on December the 2nd. So I hope you guys can make it out to that if you are in the Oakland County area, you like to drive and check out her stuff. So her website is tinasexportraits.com. And she's got a lot of things that she's been working on for a long time. And I hope you guys come out and see the work that she does. She's in the chat. Tina's in the chat. At least on YouTube anyway. She'll probably post a link on Facebook as well. So yeah, hope to see you guys there. God bless you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.